Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sunny Cook, and I serve as president of MiraCosta College. And I want to welcome you here for this particular event. We have in the audience, we have community members, we have employees, we have foundation board members, we have MiraCosta board members. And I know that we're streaming the event so that people can watch it, even though they may not be able to be in this room. And I think we have an overflow room as well. So welcome again. Thanks for being here at MiraCosta College. We are a 2-year public-funded institution. It's a California community college, and we are funded primarily by our taxpayers in North San Diego County. We also receive funds from our state, and we receive funds from the federal government, and that's going to be a lot of the conversation today is about federal funds and the impacts that they have in our community. MiraCosta has 4 different sites, and we serve 27,000 students across those sites. And again, just to set a little bit of context, MiraCosta receives about $54 million in federal investments. That involves about $13 million in payments to our students in Pell Grants and federal financial aid. It involves, we are a proud Hispanic serving institution. We have been that for over a decade. And we have 2 different grants, each for $3 million, that support this growing population in San Diego County that sadly has the lowest educational attainment across the nation. So we have about $6 million in those funds. And our foundation, members of whom are here, have raised private funds to match some of those federal investments so that the work of those grants can continue beyond the life of the grant. We have multi-year funding from the National Science Foundation that also supports the work that we do, and you're going to hear about one of our programs, our bachelor's degree program, that is uniquely made to be a local, affordable, incredibly exceptional program at putting people into the workforce that's growing in San Diego County and that is so badly needed in the life science and biotech region. So again, I want to say $54 million overall, and I want to start and begin with our students receive $13 million of Pell Grants, federal financial aid, and the supports that they need to access equitable education in our community and to better their lives and increase their social economic mobility. I'm also going to say, just as a point of personal pride, I am quite certain that I would not be in this role as president of any college had it not been for the Pell Grant, federal financial aid, and NIH grants and NSF grants that helped me to study and propel myself through bachelor's degree and PhD and to be a research scientist and a teacher and ultimately to end up in the most rewarding job I've ever held, which is to be the president of this college. So with that, you're going to hear a panel of individuals. You're going to hear 2 panels, one focused on pre-K through K-12 education. That's the esteemed colleagues we have over here. And then we'll turn the corner and talk about federal investments in higher education. And you'll hear that along this side of the panel. And now my job is to sit down after welcoming you and to turn it over to our Congressman Levin.
Well, let's hear it for Dr. Cook. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Cook. It is great to bring a Washington, D.C. style hearing back here to the 49th District, and it's always an honor to be at MiraCosta College. For those that I don't know, I'm Mike Levin. For the last 6+ years, I've been representing North County, San Diego, and South Orange County in the United States House of Representatives. We, I think, have the most beautiful district in the United States, as evidenced by the perfect weather outside. But the fact that we're all inside rather than outside tells me that we've got some serious business to do, because it's a really beautiful day out there. I also am a member of the House Appropriations Committee, where I have jurisdiction over all of the discretionary spending of the federal government, which of course includes all the spending for education, both K through 12, and the investments we make in higher education, the investments we make in community colleges, as well as the research funding that we're going to be speaking about. Normally what we do is we have 2 panels when we do hearings in D.C. back to back. We don't make everybody sit up the whole time on the second panel. So if anybody needs to take a break, you need to use the restroom, you feel free to do that. This really is a window into, for those of you that have watched the hearings, this is how we do things. And ultimately, for me, as a member of Congress, these are some of the most valuable things that we do because it's all about learning. It's about listening, asking questions, and learning. And today, I think we're all going to learn a lot. So we'll try to keep this as tight as we can. I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to make a brief introductory statement, and then I'm going to jump right into the questions that I have for each of you. We're going to start with the four of you, and then we'll move over to the six of you. Big panel, but I really, really appreciate it. In our district, I'm proud not only to represent MiraCosta College, but also several Head Start centers and a vibrant community of public, private, and charter schools, including several schools on Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. Really, I think for me, fair and equal access to education is the foundation. It's foundation for life-saving research. It's foundation for new technology. It's the foundation for lifting individuals and families out of poverty. Opportunities in education foster a more engaged, more understanding, and a more informed society and uplift all communities. I'm the parent of two young kids. They're 12 and 10. They both attend Title I public schools, and I care deeply about their future. I care deeply about all children's future. Unfortunately, what we are seeing right now, if you've been paying attention to the news, there's a lot going on. But one of the things that is very disconcerting to me are threatened cuts to the public education system and to research funding. And ultimately, if that happens, our nation will suffer, our children will suffer. And I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. We know there's really no better dollar spent as the federal government than dollars that we spend on young people. The economic analysis that you read suggests anywhere from every dollar you spend yields back $4 to $16 in terms of the improved economic and societal outcomes. When you invest in children, you make sure they have enough to eat, you make sure they have a decent education. Their job prospects, economic prospects go up dramatically. Their rates of incarceration go down dramatically. They're taxpayers that pay a whole lot more in taxes over time. So it really is one of the worst decisions we could make to stop helping to fund programs that ensure our young people are able to succeed. I think you've seen the recent actions by the DOGE, the destruction of government by Elon is what I call it, and also by the Trump administration, particularly around education and around research programs. Just a few things that they want to cut, and this is only a small list. Title I funding, school meals, IDEA for those with disabilities, special education programs, Head Start, Pell Grants, funding for HBCUs, minority-serving institutions, Hispanic-serving institutions, federal work study, workforce development grants, career technical and adult education, and that's just scratching the surface on what they're talking about. Then there's been recent guidance from the administration mandating a 15% cap across all National Institutes of Health grants, and this would have a disastrous impact for our research institutions and our regional economy. And we're going to hear from UCSD a little bit later. Just locally, what we're talking about is $100 million a year for UCSD alone. Think of that. $800 million for the University of California, $4 billion a year in NIH funding that would be cut. It means fewer life-saving cures for those patients across the country in search of a cure. And it means a real hit to our economy. Think of all the private sector jobs as well that those research projects support. The other thing you're hearing about is cuts to the Department of Education such that we don't even need a Department of Education anymore. In fact, the president put Linda McMahon, a former wrestling promoter, in charge. She was in charge of the Small Business Administration in the first term and now is in charge of the Department of Education. And when he congratulated her on her being the new Secretary of Education, he said, "I hope you put yourself out of a job," meaning I hope that we don't even need a Department of Education. I wanted to say a few things about that. The Department of Education serves over 50 million students attending 98,000 public schools in the United States. They also provide grant, loan, and work study assistance to more than 12 million post-secondary students across the country. And the Department of Education has made incredible positive impact in the lives of students across America, from rural communities to urban communities, regardless of socioeconomic status. So I'm going to do everything I can to fight back against those cuts and against the attempt to dismantle the Department of Education. I think we know that there are thousands, tens of thousands of students in our district who rely on these programs. For some, the free and reduced lunch they get is the best meal of the day. The after-school programs that are there, Head Start, access to mental health professionals. But when education becomes scarce, when resources are diminished, students from early childhood to adult education all lose out. And not to mention, as I've said, the dramatic impact it would have on our local economy, on our regional economy. Thousands of jobs right here in our district could be at risk. Never mind the less equitable education system for our young people and students across the country. Now, we hear a lot about efficiency, right? This isn't about efficiency. The reality is that the cuts they're talking would not have anything to do with efficiency. I support efficiency as much as anybody. I don't support bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy. There ought to be a good faith effort to figure out ways for the federal government to tighten its belt. That needs to happen. This is not that. This is the destruction of government by Elon. The other thing I'll mention is that a lot of what's happening I don't think is legal. The Constitution, and I carry it around with me, not just today, I promise, but the Constitution says no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Congress has the power of the purse. And the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 and the Anti-Deficiency Act have said very clearly, the Supreme Court overwhelmingly, the Congress overwhelmingly have affirmed that only the Congress has the power of the purse to both appropriate the funds, authorize the programs. And last I checked, Elon Musk was not elected to anything. So I'm going to keep fighting to protect our power of the purse against these cuts. In today's hearing, we're going to hear from students, educators, and education professionals about the importance of federal funding and investments under the Department of Education and other related federal departments. These panelists serve across the educational spectrum. They've committed their careers to expanding educational access and improving student success, and they are direct beneficiaries in some cases of the investments that were made. So you're going to get a glimpse of what a congressional hearing looks like, and you're going to hear from people who are impacted directly in this community about what these cuts could really mean. Now, here's the other sad thing that you need to know. My Republican colleagues, they have the gavels. They're the ones that call the hearings in D.C., and they're not calling hearings about this. They're not talking about the real-world implications of the things they're discussing. And that's a shame. And that's something that I just want to put out there because it's important that you hear that. So this conversation today is incredibly important to see the real on-the-ground impact of these indiscriminate and irresponsible cuts to our education system. And now we'll begin with the first panel. We've got Alexis Avina, Chief Early Childhood Education Officer for MAC, Dr. Julie Vitale, the Superintendent of the Oceanside Unified School District, Joseph Murrow, who is a high school student, thank you for being here, aspiring UC San Diego Triton, it appears, and MiraCosta College Gear Up participant, and Dr. Alkita Wojcik, Vice President of Student Services for MiraCosta College. We'll begin by having each of you introduce yourself if you want to spend just a minute and talk about what you do. I do have a clock, but I'm not going to be as strict as in Washington, but if you want to just each introduce yourself for a minute or two, and then I'll take your questions, or I'll give some questions. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Alexis Avina, and as the Chief Early Childhood Education Officer at MAC, I lead a $40 million child development program that serves nearly 2,000 children across 43 locations in San Diego County, primarily in North County and in your district, Congressman. With a team of over 300 dedicated professionals, we are not just educators of Head Start programs. We are change makers. We provide high-quality early learning, comprehensive family services, and a pathway to a brighter future for the families who need it most. I'm here as an employee of MAC as well. For 60 years, MAC has been more than a service provider. It has been a pillar of hope, a force of economic mobility, and an anti-poverty organization that reaches over 100,000 individuals every year. So through our education, health services, economic, and housing, we help families build generational wealth, stability, and success. Our Head Start and Early Head Start programs serving children from birth to 5 years old are the foundation of that mission. Walk into any of our classrooms today and you'll see more than just children learning. You'll see families accessing critical resources, children receiving developmental and health screenings, parents finding the support they need to break the cycles of poverty and create better futures. This work changes lives, it strengthens families, and it uplifts entire communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Savinia. Dr. Vitale.
Well, I wasn't nervous until after that, and all these cameras started. I like the cameras.
You're going to do great.
On you. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Vitale. I'm the superintendent of the Oceanside Unified School District, and proud to say also a public school product, K-12. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to dedicate my career to public education. Oceanside Unified serves 22 schools here in Oceanside Unified, and we serve just over 15,000 students. And as you mentioned, we have 3 schools on Camp Pendleton and are very proud to serve our military-connected students.
Thank you, Dr. Vitale. Mr. Murrow.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph Moodle, and I am a senior in El Camino High School. I will be graduating with honors, hopefully, in the spring.
All right. Excellent.
I am 17 years old. I've lived in Oceanside my entire life, and I've been a part of the Gear Up program since around 7th grade. So, yeah. Thank you.
And you
so
got
much.
your shirt. You're going to have to. I saw like 160,000 applicants to UCSD. I saw that, but we'll try to put in a good word for you, Joseph. Appreciate that you're here. And Dr. Wojcik.
Now, I'd like to add that he's starting at MiraCosta first before
That's
it goes
good.
to
Okay.
UCSD.
All right.
The right choice. Dr. Alkita Wojcik, Vice President of Student Services at MiraCosta College and also Principal Investigator for the Gear Up grant in our partnership with the Oceanside Unified School District and MiraCosta College. And I oversee student support here at MiraCosta. Sunny has talked a little bit about what the college provides for the community, but specifically in the student support, we have programs such as the veteran programs that support our veteran students, especially being so close to Camp Pendleton, military-affiliated families, as well as first-generation students and low-income students through our programs such as Educational Opportunity Program and Services. We have CARE program. So there are several programs that we offer here at the college without which the students would not be able to be successful or have a college-going culture where they can continue and move on while they work as well as go to school.
Thank you so much. And before we begin, also, I do know that this is streaming live. Thanks for those who are tuning in. Thanks for our local news for covering this. Appreciate that. And thanks to my team for working very hard to organize all of this on short notice. I'm very grateful again to everybody at MiraCosta and all for all who are participating. I figured we could start with our youngest students, and so we'll start with Ms. Savinia. Last month, the administration threatened to completely freeze funding for thousands of federal programs, including early childhood education. And while the courts have implemented a temporary restraining order and the Office of Management and Budget has rescinded that report, there is still a real threat of further funding freezes and cuts. And Ms. Savinia, if this funding freeze were ever to go into effect for Head Start, what would that mean for your center?
Congressman Levin, it's ironic that you bring that up because while the entirety of Head Start isn't frozen or being cut today, the first round of cuts has already begun. As I'm sure you're aware, just last Friday, 20% of the Office of Head Start's workforce was eliminated, including key staff in our region. These are people who process grants, provide technical assistance, and ensure that we have the resources to serve our children and families. These cuts have an immediate and critical impact: delays in funding, reduced oversight, and less support at a time when we need it most. And while we are afraid that this is just the beginning, if deeper cuts or a full funding freeze take effect, the consequences for programs that offer Head Start, such as MAC Child Development Program, would be nothing short of devastating. At best, Head Start programs would have months, not years, not even a full program cycle to keep our doors open. And while we would fight with everything we have to find solutions, the reality is this: over 2,000 families of our most vulnerable learners would lose access to early education, developmental screenings, nutritious meals, and critical family support services. These aren't just numbers, these are real children. Children without this foundational support will enter kindergarten already behind, struggling academically, socially, and emotionally. And when a child starts behind, the gaps only widen. For parents, many of whom work essential jobs, this would be crippling. They would face the impossible choice: leave their jobs to care for their children, or scramble for childcare they cannot afford. Families are already stretched thin, would be pushed to the brink. And the impact wouldn't stop there. Employers would lose reliable workers, schools would have to bridge even wider learning gaps, social services would be overwhelmed, and local vendors and suppliers who provide services for our programs would lose their contracts or potentially jobs. What is the real cost of funding cuts? A reduction in funding would mean fewer children in Head Start classrooms, missing critical early learning opportunities, job losses and economic instability for the 300+ educators and staff who serve our community, the 75 apprentices we're training to become lead child teachers, and 30+ policy council members, which are parent leaders for each of their centers. Disruptions to mental health supports, health screenings, and nutrition services are lifelines for families working hard to give children a better future. If Head Start disappears completely, we don't just lose a program, we lose a lifeline. We lose a safe place. We lose the future of thousands of children who deserve a fair start. This is about economic stability for working families, the well-being of entire communities, social justice and breaking cycles of poverty. And Congressman Levin, we appreciate your continued leadership. We need your voice to fight for these children, these families, in our community.
And I want to make sure I understand that you said 20%
Of OHS staff.
has already been cut
On Friday,
on Friday,
last Friday.
and that was here in San Diego,
That was federal.
nationwide.
So the federal staff that sit at the federal OHS office. So we
And-
haven't felt that yet locally,
Okay,
but we know at the federal office.
on Friday. So if it's like the other cuts that we've seen, and this is an observation across the board, you might have heard about probationary employees. People say that they're letting go of probationary employees.
Correct.
So when you hear that, you think, number one, these are employees that did something wrong. That's not so. Number two, you hear that these are new employees on a probationary period. That is true for some of them. For some of them, they're in their first year of service. They don't have some of the rights of those who have served longer. But in terms of performance, it's the case in the federal government that probationary actually can mean that you were just promoted to be a manager or to be a supervisor. So if you're a new supervisor or a new manager, you're probationary for a period of time. So some of the people that are being let go, I think with destruction of government by Elon, it was, again, this approach of we're going to just arbitrarily cut whoever we can cut. People on probation with some of the best performance reviews are the ones who were let go. People who were just promoted are the people who were just let go. I think it's important that folks understand that. And we'll follow up with you and try to wrap our heads around the 20% cut.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Vitale, let's move to K through 12 education. Can you share more about what would happen to schools across Oceanside if Title I and IEDA funding were cut? And I can tell you that I looked into what would happen to my son's middle school, and it's a terrible situation there, but I'd love to hear from you what it would mean for OUSD.
Yeah, I'll speak to IDEA funding first. So this funding supports our students with disabilities. And we use those funds for staffing, so all the way from teachers to speech pathologists to school psychologists to instructional assistants, all very critical people to support our students. We also use that money to fund non-public school for our students with disabilities who aren't successful in the K-12 environment that need a little extra support. We pay for the non-public school for them. We also pay for assistive devices for students that need help with communication, whether that's hearing or speaking, and the supports go on and on. We use those funds for that as well. In addition, we use it for transportation, so transporting students that need to get to and from home to school. And we also have an adult transition program for our students that are 18 to 22 that we use those funds for. So losing those funds would be devastating to Oceanside schools and all other schools, I would dare say, across the country. Title I, we received $4.5 million from Title I.
Mm-hmm.
And right now that goes to parent involvement activities, books for our libraries, which we continue to grow, intervention programs, before and after school tutoring that we're able to provide 24/7, 365 for students who need the help. And primarily that funding, though, is used for elementary school counselors.
Mm-hmm.
We've made the commitment in Oceanside to really support social emotional learning. We had counselors always at the middle school and high school, but the investment at the elementary school has made a significant difference for our students. Generally, the responsibility to assist students with their social emotional needs would fall on the teacher or the administrator, who were very overwhelmed with other responsibilities like educating children and teaching them to read and mathematics. So our counselors have made a significant impact on really supporting, of course, the academic component, but the social component and the emotional component. Like, for example, at one of our schools, we have a counselor who provides what she calls the lunch bunch. And so kids that aren't necessarily feeling, maybe they're not feeling very social that day, they're not feeling very connected, or they're having some struggles, they can go into the counselor space. We built out beautiful classrooms for them, and they can just go in and maybe read a book, maybe relax, maybe do a community activity with a friend, maybe talk with the counselor, something that supports them rather than them just sitting out on the playground by themselves. They also support various lessons on all different kinds of topics, one being having a growth mindset. So we all know about growth mindset as educators. We haven't mastered whatever it is yet, but we can learn and have that growth mindset to be successful. So that investment has made an incredible difference in Oceanside, and I can't even imagine our elementary schools now without elementary counselors.
And is it fair to say, Dr. Vitale, that you would have to find those funds from somewhere else? You'd either have to shut those programs down altogether or find the funds from elsewhere, and that could mean cuts in other areas like physical plan or class sizes would have to increase, things like that?
Worries me to answer that question. Someone asked me yesterday, what would you do without the federal funding? We
Yeah.
receive over $27 million in totality in federal funding.
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my head around
Yeah.
what would that mean to cut. It's mostly going to be in people,
Yeah.
right? Because we're the most expensive part of the educational system, our salaries and benefits.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to do the math on how many people that would mean to cut, other reductions to programs. So I don't really want to
I don't want
answer
to be
that question.
alarmist about it, but I think you have to do that math because I think those are the real threats. There's a discussion about eviscerating that funding. It wouldn't
Right.
all happen overnight. It would happen over a period of years, but there are those that want to eliminate it altogether and leave cities, states, to themselves. And the other thing I'll ask is, it's fair to say, or you tell me, you're the expert, that there are no other educational institutions that can serve students with disabilities in the same manner. So if you were to just, gut the IDEA funding that's still there, I've been advocating for more, by the way, for full funding of IDEA, consistent
that.
with the original
Right.
legislation in the 60s.
Right.
But if you gut that funding altogether, what happens to those children with disabilities?
I mean, ultimately, as public educators, we're going to figure out a way to serve kids.
Yeah.
We don't discriminate based on anything. So however you show up to our school system, we're going to serve you. So we're going to find a way. We've always found a way to fund critical things. So we'll still serve the students. We'll figure it out. Don't ask me specifically now what we're going to cut or how we're going to do it. I
Yeah.
got board members in the room
Yeah, no, I
and
understand.
constituents, but we're not going to stop serving kids. We're not going to stop educating kids. We're not going to stop prioritizing the needs of students with disabilities.
Yep.
We'll figure it out.
I really appreciate it. I mean, the stakes are very, very high, obviously. But I thank you for all that you're doing to educate our young people. And speaking of young people, Mr. Murrow, thank you for sharing your personal story with us before. Can you share more about how federal investments have shaped your readiness for your post-secondary education? And further, how would the absence of these investments change your goals, your educational goals?
I will definitely just go on to say, just being able to. I came here today not as a voice for Gear Up, but as an inspiration of what it has done to many students here in OUSD. I started my academic career with Gear Up back in 7th grade, and I didn't know it then, but that was probably the best decision I've ever made in my life. Being able to have this federal funding where we're able to go visit schools as far as UCLA, UCR to SDSU. They were able to help me with my academics such as math and science, gain friendships I still cherish today, and allowed me to have my own in-school family. As COVID hurt students' education across the country, Gear Up was there to help and ensure that we got the tutoring we needed, as well as the fun activities that we were used to, such as the college visits, as we did virtual ones. As I entered high school, Gear Up stood by my side, and I honestly don't think I would be graduating with honors without them. I went from failing math to being able to not have to take any math classes my senior year because of their help. I went from being scared of taking APs to now have taken 6, and I've learned so many valuable life lessons in terms of my education. It was programs that Gear Up provided, like Gear Up for College, in which I was able to take 3 college courses over the summer. It was because of Gear Up I went to Washington, D.C. for 5 days to attend a National Youth Leadership Summit. Being able to explore our nation's capital with the amazing Gear Up staff, Miss Izzy and Mr. Omar, my mom, and my friends was truly life-changing and supercharged my ambitions of becoming a politician later on in life.
Uh-oh.
I was able to gain so many valuable memories, friendships, and most importantly, leadership skills I was able to apply back at home. Here in my community, I've helped to reestablish the Youth Commission here in Oceanside, led its student walkout to protest the recent immigration crackdown headed by the Trump administration, and now working with a nonprofit to help register high schoolers to vote. Gear Up has helped me become the person I am today, an honor student who has a deeper understanding of my options beyond high school and a leader in my community. As the wish me and my team created at the National Youth Leadership Summit I attended, we wish for every student to be a Gear Up student. Now, without these funds, I honestly don't know where I would be today. Many of my peers at OUSD, honestly, I don't think would be able to walk in and for at least at El Camino, we have white gowns. I don't think we'd be able to walk in our white gowns in June.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm planning like, sorry, I didn't want to butcher your name. Alkeida said, I'm going to be going to MiraCosta first, and then I'm going to be transferring over to UCSD. I didn't know that transfer was an option. I didn't know about all these different programs. I didn't know that I was able to take 6 APs. With that 6 APs, I do want to touch on that real quick. Those APs were fully funded or like fully paid for. I didn't have to pay money out of pocket for those APs.
Amazing.
Same thing with the summer courses that I took. All 3 of them that I took, they were all expense paid for. Same thing with that National Youth Leadership Summit I attended. That was all expense paid for. Just having those opportunities helped me be able to be ready to take college. I'm not scared about coming to MiraCosta this upcoming fall. I am ready for it, and I'm ready to take charge for it.
All right, look out. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really inspiring and excellent job. Dr. Wojcik, to finish us up on the first panel, could you expand on how federal investments support low-income students and reduce barriers to higher education? And same question, those funds go away, what real-world consequences here on the ground in our community do you see?
It is very hard to follow Joseph because he's the story in why these grants are important. And I had the privilege of being with Joseph in Washington, D.C. in the National Youth Leadership that they participated, and seeing all of our Gear Up students from Oceanside stand up in front of 3,000 plus folks to talk about the importance of Gear Up was very, very powerful. So I'm grateful that he's joining us here today, especially since this week they are off. So he's on his day off in here. Thank you,
He
Joseph.
didn't cut class to be here. We're just being let's be very clear about this. Be very clear
It's an
about
honor,
this.
students,
Don't want to get you in
okay.
trouble, Joseph.
Yeah.
We're all good.
But really, programs like Gear Up have a goal of creating a college-going culture and providing opportunities to students who are historically marginalized and historically underserved, as well as very low income and first generation. And so the goals of the Gear Up is how do we increase success in high school graduation, but also how do we increase access to higher education? And so while Joseph talks about his personal stories, the data tells us the stories of thousands and hundreds of thousands of students across the nation that Gear Up has been able to support. And specifically for the Oceanside, the Gear Up is focused on providing tutoring, providing workshops to students, as well as to families, as well as to educators in the Oceanside Unified School Districts. We provide college and university visits, which low-income families would not have access to. When spring break usually comes around, you hear families that have the opportunities and are not first generation that are taking their kids to visit different colleges so that they can prepare where do they apply. Low-income and first generation students do not have that access to be able to travel across the state or across the nation to explore universities and colleges, to get that excitement of going to a college and have that access. And so Gear Up provides that opportunity for the students where they can visit a university and see that they belong there and they are part of that. It increases the college-going culture for those communities. For us, with the Gear Up grant specifically, and we have had 2 Gear Up grants, so we are on the second one, wrapping up the second round of the Gear Up grants. But the first one, we have the numbers for that increased the graduation rate of 90% for Oceanside Unified School District, and that was with the baseline metric of 63%. So having a graduation rate of 90% from 63% with the Gear Up is significant. That is hundreds and hundreds of students who would have not been able to graduate from high school, and we know the impact that that has on our community. The other aspect of it with the Gear Up, we had an increase of at least 15% of Gear Up students who completed with a GPA of 3.0 or above. And that is also significant because now you have access to higher education when your GPA is higher than 3.0 versus students who think, oh, I don't know that I can apply to a college and apply to a university if my GPA is below that. The other data that we have is students who were part of the Gear Up cohort on the first cohort were able to complete their courses with A through G, which is what you need to transfer to a university or to go to a university. It went without an F, it went from 55% to 85%. So that's also another significant increase that provides opportunities to students. And also through Gear Up, we were able to provide field trip as well as speakers that we would bring from STEM fields that students can see access to other fields that they can see in their community where they might feel that they have, what their parents are doing and might not really know what exists out there. Having speakers and having mentors and having visits of whether it is the San Diego Zoo or the Texas university and access to different speakers, it provides them the opportunity. I think the impact of Gear Up and programs like Gear Up has also been in increasing the financial literacy for the low-income families. Usually, first-generation and low-income families might think, my son or daughter might not be able to go to college because we can't afford it. And the focus for us through this Gear Up grant has been to include families every step of the way to provide financial literacy, not only to our students, to the students of Oceanside Unified District, but also to include the families in all of those workshops. So we have provided hundreds of workshops on financial literacy and financial aid so that students and parents can feel that education is there for them and higher education is there for them, and they don't feel that that's not a possibility accessibility. And that increased significantly by double digits as well, the completion of FAFSA of Oceanside Unified School District students. So the ones that completed the financial aid application was a significant increase through the Gear Up. So not having federal programs like Gear Up, and then later on, Dr. Cook talked a little bit about Pell Grants, and
Yep.
that has the need for Pell Grants has significantly increased, where we went from 13 million the year before to 15.4 million this
Yep.
year
Yep.
in Pell Grants. So that is a significant increase in that. That is direct aid to the students. So
Yep.
not having things like that in our community really is a detriment to what it is that this community, can have without access to higher education, without access to career explorations and career development. And so not only the higher education, but also the programs that we offer through community colleges and other assistance that we provide to the students.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I wanted to mention, since you've now heard from some of our witnesses, what is all this about? Why are they trying to cut these funds? It's pay for a tax cut for the very wealthy. That's what this is about, so that they can extend the 2017 tax cuts, and 80% roughly of those benefits will go to the top 1% of taxpayers. So you literally have Elon Musk trying to find programs to cut so they can have a tax cut that benefits Elon Musk. That's really what we're talking about here. But I want to thank all four of you. You've been an excellent first panel. And why don't we give our first panel a round of applause? Thank you. Normally, you would all go sit down, and then the other panelists would come up, and we're just going to do that instead. We're going to introduce our second panel. First is Luis de Luna, who is a MiraCosta College graduate, biomanufacturing graduate. Thank you for being here. Next is Esther Nair, graduate of biomanufacturing and a current General Atomics employee. It's a pleasure to have you here. Dr. Mike Fino, the Dean of Natural and Social Sciences here at MiraCosta College. Danae Pescarmona, the Vice President of Instructional Services at MiraCosta College. Good to see you. Ray Clendenning, who is a trustee at MiraCosta College. Always good to see you, Ray. And Dr. Corinne Peak Asa, who's the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at UCSD. We're going to save plenty of time for you, I promise. We're saving the best. All of you are great, but we've got big challenges around NIH funding, so we're going to make sure that we give you plenty of time. With that, let me go to Mr. De Luna. I understand from what I've heard about you, you were a Pell Grant recipient, and you're also a biomanufacturing graduate of MiraCosta. Tell us how the Pell Grant, actually before any of that, I got to give you all an opening statement, a little opening statement. So why don't you each just take a minute and introduce yourself and tell us what brought you here. We'll start with you, Mr. De Luna.
Hi, yeah, of course. So my name is Luis de Luna. First and foremost, I'm a San Diego native, extremely proud for that. A Padres fan as well, but also low income, first generation student, as well as a Pell Grant recipient. And that's what I'm here today to talk about, is how that Pell Grant has allowed me to develop myself both educationally and professionally.
Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. So my name is Esther Nair, and I'm honored to share my story to emphasize the importance of these programs and funding. Like many college students, I enrolled at MiraCosta right out of high school, and but then I dropped out within the first year to get married. And it took about 11 years to realize that that was a bad choice. The person I was with was not good. There was some safety issues, so I filed for divorce and found myself in a situation because I had two wonderful children. One of them is actually here today.
All right.
And I had no way to provide for them. So I got to the point where I was getting foreclosure notices and our utilities were being shut off. And my little sister was a student ambassador here. She approached me and dragged me over for a tour. And I remember even when I was here on the tour, I just had no hope because, I know that people go tens of thousands of dollars into debt to get a college education. I couldn't do that. I couldn't afford that. I didn't see how that would provide a future for myself or for my children. But during that tour, I met some key people and I was able to ask questions and learned about federal funding and programs and just ways to allow people like myself to be successful in education. So I went ahead and I applied. In my head, it was like one step at a time. Let's get this first semester done. During that first semester, I was introduced to the biomanufacturing program. I had no idea what biotechnology even meant, but I declared it my major. And 5 years later, I have 2 AAs, one in biotechnology research and development, one in math and science, the Bachelor of Science in biomanufacturing. I was also able to complete an internship in stem cell research, and all of this was due to funding, really all of it. I was a recipient of the Pell Grant, and I just wanted to mention while I was going through all of this, my daughter was also at El Camino and was a recipient of the name. Gear Up, thank you. Yeah, and so both of us just received incredible support and helped us all to be successful in our journeys. So
Amazing. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it just in a brief moment,
Please.
because I know
No,
that we're.
no, go for it.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to pause here to stress the impact of these financial programs had on my life. Because if you compare the 10 years ago where I was applying for jobs and I couldn't find anything because I just was not a qualified candidate, to now I went from, before I even graduated with that degree, I was able to land a job as a quality analyst in a biotechnology startup, worked my way up to senior quality assurance specialist, and I just accepted a job as a project administrator at General Atomics in their aeronautical division.
Excellent.
So I start next
Great.
week. I'm very
Great.
excited.
Excellent. That's awesome.
It's been crazy.
All right, you got to top that. No. Thank you for sharing that
Thank you.
incredible story. Dr. Fino.
Esther usually makes me cry when she tells her story, so I'm just glad that there aren't tears in my eyes right now. My name is Mike Fino. I'm the Dean of Natural and Social Sciences here at MiraCosta College that has 10 academic departments. Many of our STEM majors are in this school. The school also has our biomanufacturing degree, 4-year degree, that was the first in the nation, and so very happy to have 2 of our graduates here to join us. As part of the school, we also have a bioscience workforce development hub, and this is a group that's engaged in engagement with industry partners, connecting not just our college, but colleges around the state to local biotech, bioscience companies. And their work is entirely funded through grants. And so that group holds 3 NSF grants right now. One of them is an excellent grant, experiential learning in emerging and new technologies. One of them is called Bioscope. Both of those are focused on work-based learning opportunities for our students, and doing stem cell research, doing gene synthesis, gene editing, exosomes, opportunities for our students to really experience and live and do science and get paid for it. So that's almost $3 million of funding that we have from the NSF, that the vast majority of that goes directly for student wages and to support student projects. They're able to show up to companies not only with their wages paid for, but also with supply money to support their projects to advance the work of the company. So that work is managed through our workforce development hub, and just really underscores the impact that those federal funds can have on students like we have here today.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Ms. Pescarmona.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing us to be here. My name is Danae Pescarmona. I'm the Vice President of Instructional Services here at MiraCosta College. And I realized this year I've worked in higher education for 30 years, which was terrifying to realize. And 23 years have been in the California Community College system. And so here at MiraCosta, all of the classroom instruction, credit, non-credit, not for credit, contract education, as well as dual enrollment programs, library tutoring services are part of the core work that we do. This work that we do every day, as Joseph and Esther and Luis have illustrated, this changes lives. Every day we change lives, and we come here to change lives. And I'm grateful to be part of that. Part of my portfolio is also working with Dr. Fino as oversight for the Bioscience Hub. But we also have a Technology Career Institute that is really reliant on federal grants and funds. And we have 2 Title V developing Hispanic serving institutions. So all total, we have over $9.5 million in addition to the funding we have through NSF to support students. And I think that is the most important thing I'll say as often as I can. This work supports students. And so I've also had the privilege in my career, this is the 4th, I have now been the executive sponsor for 4 Title V grants as well as a Title III grant. We take that responsibility seriously. These are grants that last 5 years. We make sure that we have plans for institutionalizing those grants. I want to just recognize and acknowledge the foundation, because part of our first Title V grant was to establish an endowment that would ensure that the work we do, the skills that we learn, the knowledge we learn, the practices we adopt can be last for in perpetuity because of that endowment. And so I'm grateful because they have committed themselves to a matching fundraising effort to do that work. What we do here every day is focused at, we do transformative work on behalf of our students, and our goal is thriving, excellent communities. And so I feel very passionate when I see Joseph and Luis and Esther here. I know that they are in our community and they will continue to do good work, have wonderful families who are here to support them, and that we will thrive as a community because of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Clendenning.
Hi, my name is Ray Clendenning, and I am a trustee here at MiraCosta College. And I'm really proud to be a representative of the college and the work that we do every day to be sure that students, whether they're 18 years old, 16 years old, 15 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, that everyone gets the opportunity to come to college, because we accept everyone here and help them to do the work that needs to be done. And it's really important when we talk about the pathways from actually Head Start through college and advanced degrees, to be sure that we as a nation are supporting our students in ways that they can make meaning out of their lives. I taught Head Start preschool. I know what that's like. I have been a school principal, worked at the district level. I understand what it is that we need to do to be sure that we are creating the pathways that students need to do the work that needs to be done. And I think it's really important that we know that the early success that happens at Head Start, that goes through K-12, that comes to the community college. I was a community college student. I understand the benefit of being a student who didn't have the money to do the things that needed to be done. And interestingly enough, I got through my master's degree with not having used any of the federal funds. And it's really interesting when people talk about it, because I figured out a way to have to pay for everything that I did along the way. So it's really interesting that sometimes you don't need the federal funds, you just need the drive to do what needs to be done. And I think that that's important for people to understand. I'm not saying that people don't need the funds. I'm just saying that everybody has to choose a path. And quite frankly, I didn't know that those resources were available to me. So as a former principal, I get the opportunity sometimes to talk to my former students and to talk to my parents. And I was talking to a parent just the other day about Gear Up and the importance of Gear Up for that parent and that student. And the parent said to me, you know, right now we're afraid. We're afraid of what's going to happen with our kids. We're afraid of what's going to be happening with the programs that have been there for our kids. And I think it's really important for me as a trustee here at the college to be doing the work that I can to be sure that we are supporting all of the families that need the help through Gear Up. Because Gear Up, I was part of that program when it initially started. In Oceanside. I was working at the time. So I'm very, very familiar with the impact of what's happened with that program. And I think that we need to also understand that parents need to be brought along with us with what it is that we're doing in the community with their students, because they need to be the advocates. They need to be the action makers doing the work that needs to be done. It's important for us to be sure that we have the Pell Grants for our students. We want to be sure that they have the resources that are needed in order for them to achieve their goals and to reach their potential. And we also need to be sure that we are creating opportunities for workforce development for students so that they get the certificates or whatever it is that they need to be successful. So I'm thrilled to be here, and it's really important that the government understands that the work that is being done at the community colleges and before, that it's important work and it needs to be funded, it needs to be resourced. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clendenning. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Picasa.
Thank you. So I'm Corinne Piquesa, Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at UC San Diego. So I oversee the research portfolio, which is at this moment $1.7 billion in total research funding. We rank number 6th for competitive federal research funding in the nation. And I will comment that we are number 1 in the UCs for competitive federal funding. We're very proud of that, although we also love our UC partners. I also oversee our innovation portfolio, and I'm particularly proud of the innovation that we do, because that is how we are contributing to the ecosystem and building the workforce. We are ranked again number 4 in the country for all universities for the number of startups we put out, and we're in the top 10 for the licensable IP that we put out. And that is a commitment our chancellor has to being an innovation-forward campus, including offering an innovation opportunity, entrepreneurship opportunity for every one of our students in makers labs, innovation accelerators, et cetera. But I will say our ability to compete as a leading national university is completely dependent on the ecosystem where we are set. And that includes the mecca of higher education and primary school that we're sitting in. It includes our industry partners. It includes the venture capitalists, the community organizations. So it's what I'm living every day to think about the transition we're going through for our research on our campus. It hurts my heart to think collectively and cumulatively about what we're absorbing for our whole community.
Thank you. I'll have plenty of follow-up questions for you. Mr. DeLuna, talk about how the Pell Grant supported your goals, such as in the biomanufacturing program. How did it prepare you for the workforce? Where do you think you'd be today without the Pell Grant?
Very good question. So, as I mentioned before, I was low income most of my life. So, as a baby boy, I was on week programs, grew up a little bit, ended up depending on school lunch programs, the free ones. And then back when I was in high school, I depended on AVID programs for college readiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now that I'm a grown man, I depended on the Pell Grants for almost everything. So, throughout all of my studies, I was working and going to school full time just to help out my parents pay off some of the bills, some of the expenses of us living here. And the Pell Grant helped me because I was able to complete my education for them. So part of it was I was able to pay for my tuition. Another part was my educational supplies, and then eventually it allowed me the flexibility to be able to intern and be a part of the workforce development programs that would allow me to just develop hands-on skills more than just the theory that I was learning in my classes. And this made me pretty competitive and knowledgeable in the field that I studied for, which was biomanufacturing, but also just biotechnology as a whole. And without them, I mean, when I was in high school, I never planned to go to college. I never planned to earn a degree. And with all of the support that I got from here at MiraCosta and from the financial support from the Pell Grants, I was able to do all of that and a little bit more, just a little bit more, pretty easily. So I'd say that Pell Grants was vital towards my success.
Ms. Nair, thank you again for sharing your story, incredibly moving story. Can you talk more about how cuts to the programs you mentioned will harm employers like General Atomics, who rely on this whole ecosystem as well? And what impact do you think these cuts could have on our competitiveness as a country?
Yes, well, if you follow the logic, if these programs aren't available, then thousands, I don't know the number, but thousands of students will not be able to get their higher education degrees. So people like me would not, I wouldn't be here. From there, you look at these companies, like General Atomics, they're looking for a pool of candidates. There will be fewer. So at that point, it's very likely that very talented individuals from around the world are going to be eager to come in on work visas and have great opportunities here in the States, ultimately taking that knowledge back home with them. So that's how the United States as a whole can suffer from the lack of funding available to support their own citizens.
Thank you so much for that. Dr. Fino, we know that it can be career changing for students to work with faculty on STEM research. Can you share the impact of cuts specifically to the National Science Foundation that are being contemplated on your work, on MiraCosta, and on institutions like it, and on the students themselves?
Yes, good. Thank you. The um, wholesale cuts to the National Science Foundation would be devastating for educational institutions. And the main thing that I want to focus on is the impact in innovation. When I think we're at a time where we need massive innovation in higher education, education of our communities. And the reason for that is these National Science Foundation opportunities that are presented to faculty that pursue them is there's two main criteria when they apply to these programs, and one of them is broader impact, the other one's intellectual merit. So first, these aren't handouts. This isn't money that just goes to these. These are talented individuals who have great ideas that have to compete for these through this frame of impact and intellectual merit. And so when this money is awarded, there's a really strong basis for it. And the approach that we've taken, the projects that we're pursuing in this, are work-based learning opportunities. Largely, there's also faculty professional development just to level up the faculty that are involved in bioscience education. And so this money is going to support the students that are in these programs. And ultimately, a reduction in that, this loss of innovation means reduced representation of, as we're serving our communities, the people in our communities want to go work in our local companies. If we're not able to accelerate and catalyze them to access, develop the skills, knowledge, and abilities to access these jobs, then ultimately that leads to this reduced capacity for us to serve our community without these opportunities. And as just one tangible example of that innovation, I was a co-PI on NSF grant for 8 years, national grant, and had an industries advisory board. And so we're on the regular hearing from biotech companies about what are the skills, competencies that they want employees to have. And invariably, a lot of those were things that we could not address as a community college, being restricted to lower division. But I like to joke, the question I get least is, how did you come up with a degree that didn't exist before, which was our biomanufacturing degree? I always thought people would ask that, how did you think of that? And the answer is really simple. It was being involved in those NSF grants for 8 years. I was listening to companies talk about what they wanted. And when that opportunity came to develop this degree, it was practically already written because they had already told us what they needed.
Amazing. Thank you. Ms. Pescarmona, could you share how federal investments in Hispanic serving institutions and other minority serving institutions expand opportunities for underrepresented students?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. And I want to say, I'm a first generation college student, and this work is very personal for me. We recognize, as Dr. Cook said, that we have pockets of our community that are underserved, that have not been well served by education. And so the work, not only in the Hispanic serving institutions, the 2 grants we have, but also our Department of Energy grant that we run, our National Oceanography Atmospheric, we have a NOAA grant. We have a number of grants. And I also want to thank you, Representative Levin, for supporting our Congressional Community Projects grant.
Of course.
This work that we do every day is focused around innovation and creation of opportunities for workforce development. And at a community college, regardless of whether a student's transferring or going directly into the workforce, our job is that everybody has a career at the end of that path, wherever it is. And so we are leaning into workforce development. So what is happening with these grants? We're providing career fairs and summits where hundreds of our students are being connected with industry partners to learn about different jobs that they didn't even know existed. We are seeing an opportunity to have STEM-focused opportunities. We know that we don't just want you to get a job, we want you to get a good paying job. We want to support your family. And we know for us in North County, those careers in STEM are how we do that work. We also are focusing in not just on our Latino population, our Latina population, but through our grants, we have a uniquely abled academy that allows our differently abled adults to get CNC machine training so that they can go out working on CNC machines and, again, earn a good paying wage. And we are really supporting this idea of innovation where students are in aquaculture, bioscience, advanced manufacturing, getting future ready skills. So it's not just in the moment, it's not the first job, it's learning how to learn and learning how to advance so that they can get the next great job and the next great job and the next great job. And the work we do, it's on ramps and off ramps throughout the rest of their life to get them into higher education, to get them back into industry, to get them into higher education as they continue to upskill, reskill in benefit of their family and the communities. Those communities, we know that there's deep pockets of poverty, and in order to break those cycles of generational poverty, you need to have educational opportunities. We need to be intrusive. We need to get into communities where we're not doing outreach. We need to go to churches, community centers, other pockets where higher education just hasn't been before. And we have an opportunity to do that work better and more intentionally with these grants. And a good success story is that we had a student who was working in outreach, was doing that intentional work with one of our HSI grants, was in communities, in churches talking about this, and it helped him. And he ended up transferring to Stanford.
Wow.
And so I feel like he was our student trustee. He's at Stanford right now. And it's because we also helped him develop his leadership skills and the confidence to go on, to present at things like the Gear Up conference, to go on to Stanford. And so it's not just career, it is the holistic support, it is the leadership skills that we're developing through these grants.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pescarmona. And I appreciate that as a graduate of Stanford that story is close to home. And I can tell you that I got an email from their president as well about just very much like UCSD, just extremely concerned about the potential cuts that we're facing. Ms. Clendenning, could you talk about the importance of the Department of Education's role specifically in streamlining a seamless pathway from kindergarten all the way through the end of college, or certainly through the end of grade 14, including the access to adult education and how important that is?
Absolutely. So the U.S. Department of Education provides funding to foster seamless K-14 pathways that are essential to college access, student success, and workforce readiness. Here at MiraCosta, these pathways are particularly significant as they align with our mission to provide high-quality, accessible education that supports lifelong learning, economic mobility, and career development. Programs like the Gear Up program create a clear and structured pathway from middle school to high school to community college and beyond, and it eliminates some of the barriers that these students would face. Our adult learner population, they often face incredible challenges with balancing work, family responsibilities, financial constraints. It's just really difficult for them. And with the federal funding that is being provided, initiatives such as Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that funding gives us the ability to give non-credit programs to enable a place like MiraCosta to provide GEDs for families so that they get their high school diplomas. It provides English as a second language courses for them, and also career technical education. So it's really important that we have those funding streams to support them to get the skills that they need and for job placement. Additionally, the Department of Education supports Perkins and other grant funding opportunities, National Science Foundation investment, and career pathways that align with what it is that MiraCosta is doing with workforce development. And we're offering apprenticeships, certificate programs, associate degrees that really lead them to employment. And those are important things that we're doing with the funds that we're receiving. So we just need to strengthen those partnerships between what it is that the federal government can do to support us and to make sure that they understand that those dollars go back to impact the economic development in our community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Clendenning. Dr. Piquesa, I want to have a little bit more open-ended conversation with you, because what you're facing at UCSD and what major research universities are facing all across the country is very much in the news. In fact, the San Diego Union Tribune just had a story a few days ago that I'm sure many of you saw. San Diego researchers face big losses if court allows Trump funding cuts. UCSD says it would lose more than $100 million per year in indirect cost payments. We'll get into what that means in a second. But it said in an email sent Thursday, so this is last Thursday, UCSD administration said the campus stands to lose well over $100 million, an amount that would affect, quote, our ability to provide specialized lab space, equipment, IT support, utilities, and other critical infrastructure needed to conduct life-saving research and innovation. On February 7th, the NIH Director's Office told more than 2,500 organizations set to receive more than $30 billion in grant funding this year that ancillary payments, often called facilities and administration reimbursements, will be immediately reduced to 15%, an amount that is drastically lower than those negotiated by research institutions. In UCSD's case, the on-campus indirect cost rate is 58% for the current fiscal year, increasing to 59% in fiscal 2027. So, Dr. Piquesa, I wonder if you could just sort of in layman's terms unpack the difference between direct costs and indirect costs, and then second, talk about the reduction from the 58 to 59% today to that 15%, what that actually would mean.
So the facilities and administration costs are the cost to run the program. So when we apply for a grant, doing the scope of work is the direct dollars. And then the facilities and the administrative costs are added to that. And so those are determined by a very arduous, detailed audit of what our true costs are. So the facilities and administration that are added on the grant are actually reimbursements of cost already accrued to support the research that we're doing. So they are retroactive, they're already accrued costs. So the administrative piece covers not just a big bureaucratic quagmire, it actually covers things like our research integrity program, so we can make sure that our research is reproducible, that it's robust. It also covers things like our cybersecurity support. So you can imagine if we're doing research in things like internal medical detection devices or wearables, we need to make sure every piece of data that we collect is secure and safe. The facility side is the bigger piece of that, and it includes all kinds of things like depreciation, turning on the lights. It includes how we keep chemicals safe, how we make sure our workers and students are safe in the labs. And so some of the losses we would experience with a cut would include not being able to run the facilities that we need to solve the really complex problems. And so when we think about the facilities that we need to share for the things like drug discovery, for wearables, improved health, for diagnostics, for quantum computing, for AI infrastructure and applications, those are fairly expensive facilities, and we would need to shutter those if we're not able to support those. Another couple ways that it would impact us, one is that we have in these facilities a lot of partnerships with industry, and some of the work that we do helps advance the competitiveness of the products of those industry partners. So some examples include adding sophisticated computing algorithms to diagnostic equipment, adding robotic or autonomous features to everything from an underwater exploration vehicle to a drone system to a robotic surgery arm. And then finally, I think, as we've talked about today, the piece that worries me the most is how not being able to run these facilities will impact workforce development. We are in a critical global competition for talent. And if we are not accelerating our talent's ability to understand and work with and get their hands on this equipment, inspire them to know that not only can they use it, but they can design the next generation of it, we just stand to lose the power competition that our senior administrator and White House leader has told us we need to win.
Going back to the Trump administration's letter on February 7th, they made two main points as I see it, and I want to give you the opportunity to respond to both of them. First, they said, and this is the February 7th letter that I mentioned from the new Trump administration NIH folks to all the grant recipients across the country. The first point that they made is that many private funders of research such as the Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, pay indirect cost rates of 15% or less. So they're basically saying, why do the universities need such a higher percentage? Why don't I let you respond to that one first?
So I will reinforce that the rate that we negotiate with the federal government is a line-by-line audit of the cost that we spend in research. It's not a made-up number of what they want to give us. And I will also say that because of state investment in the university system, our research administrative and facilities costs are really much lower than research institutions, the national labs, whose rates are sometimes above 100%. So I feel like we're a pretty good deal. There are some rate negotiations. Industry pays the same full rate that we charge for federal governments. Foundations are often nonprofit organizations, and so we do have a specific rate negotiated with the state because they're already supporting a lot of the research costs that we have, such as faculty salaries. And foundations are often nonprofits, so the ability to cover that cost is less. But I also will say that it's not exactly apples to apples because there are certain costs that are not allowable on federal grants that cover the facilities and administration cost recovery that we've already negotiated. We're allowed to put many of those costs, like equipment, like administrative support, on the direct dollars of foundations. So it's not exactly like they're paying different rates. They're just completely different programs in how we put the budgets together.
Thank you for that explanation. The second point that they attempt to make is that more of the billions in grant funding from NIH should go towards the people actually performing research. Can you explain why that's a ill-conceived argument?
It's all about the people. It's really all about the people. So when we think about who is it that operates the administrative and facility piece of the research that we do, those are the people. Those are the people who are making sure things are operating well, that the lights are being turned on, that we do have the cybersecurity infrastructure. So I think we all share, a lot of us have grants, that those pieces are really still all about the people.
So the last question I have for you, Dr. Piquesa, is one of the regents, who's a San Diego native, called the prospect of these cuts a true threat to the university. Do you agree with that characterization? And how big of a threat, if you see it as a true threat?
It is a critical threat. It is a threat to our ability to accelerate research to commercial scale. It's a threat to our ability to work with all of our partners to get students' hands on the facilities that we need for the future. So I am a true believer that universities play an incredibly important part in the economic success of our country. And if we are not able to work at the top of our game, when we see many other countries investing far more in these ecosystems, it is a competition we run the risk of losing.
Thank you so much. And, of course, there are so many clinical trials that would be jeopardized. There are so many cures. Right now we have researchers working on everything from cancer to Alzheimer's to ALS to diabetes. All of that would be put at risk. I really want to can we thank our second panel? Thank you all very much. A couple of things for our panelists, which is we would love to share your stories, and we have them. This was being recorded, but if you're willing, we would love for you to share your story on social media. And if you're interested in doing that, we're trying to highlight one constituent a week on social media because it's one thing to hear from me, probably hear from me enough, but hearing from them and hearing from others in our community who are directly impacted by these threatened cuts, I think is far more compelling. So if you're interested in that, could my staff just raise their hands? Thank you. I see your smiling faces in the back. Please speak with them about sharing your story with us on social media. The second thing I will mention for everyone watching, for everyone here, is please amplify our social media, other voices out there talking about these cuts, talking about the threats to our regional, local economy, from kids in kindergarten all the way through to graduate students, all the way through to those getting adult education. These cuts really harm every aspect of our community. And again, think about the reason for them. As I said at the outset, why are they trying to make these cuts? So that they will have money to fund a massive tax break for the very, very wealthiest Americans. And it's just, for me, it just doesn't add up. I want to work in good faith with my colleagues to try to find ways that we can have a more efficient government. I mean that sincerely, so that we can identify waste and fraud in government, so that we can tighten our belts and make sure every federal dollar is being spent efficiently and effectively. This is not that. What's been discussed and what's been occurring this last month is something far different. It's arbitrary, it's reckless, it's destructive. Again, destruction of government by Elon. You can all remember that, right? So, with that, again, a big thank you to MiraCosta College and to Dr. Cook for hosting and to everybody for attending. Thank you all very much.